Okay guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start a project essentially, which is always a good thing when you're just starting out, to give yourself a project to start learning all these tools and techniques. And what we're going to be creating, if I load up an image, just something I found online, I didn't make this, but it's it's going to give us all of the sort of fundamentals for 3D modeling to create these kind of buildings. And I like to think of it as something that could be used in like a first-person shooter game or something like that. Okay, and the aim is that we're going to kind of make these modular as well. So if you are someone that is learning 3ds Max to go into modeling for games, then you can learn the process of having modular assets that you can use to create multiple different buildings and things. But if you're just learning 3ds Max just for that software, then this is also going to be a great project to learn as well. Cool. So if you literally have never touched 3ds Max before, then I would strongly suggest going back to the previous video that I did, which was like a full like introduction to the software in general. Um, Otherwise, it might be a struggle to keep up with this one. So yeah, I would do that one first. Okay, so I'm literally starting from the same file that I did before. So I just noticed I've still got it on clay. I'm just going to turn that back to um, default shading, back to standard, back to that. Everything's as it would be now, as if you just started a new file. Okay, so if we look at our reference image, we're going to start with this building here, um, and we're going to create all these little elements individually. So like the building will create stairs, and then these doors will create as separate things, so that it can be modular. So the building itself, we'll start with this sort of piece here. Is mainly just going to be a box. It's got this section at the top that you can come up into, and it's got a little cutout area here. So, as I said before, the all your models are going to start from one of these primitive shapes. And this one, as I said before again, most things start from a box, and this one clearly does. So I'm going to get a box here. I'm going to draw something sort of that is roughly the size of our reference. But remember, you can come over here and just sort of tweak these settings until you're happy with it being roughly the right size. I think it needs to be a lot higher actually. Maybe something like that will be fine. I like to round these numbers off. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get my move tool. One thing that's always kind of good practice when you're creating a 3D model is to center it to the world. So now that I've got my move tool selected, what I can do is I can just right click on all these arrows here, and it will change all those to 0 so that the object is centered in the world. Again, if you are doing this to put this into another piece of software like a games engine, then you want that centered so that your gizmos and everything remain centered on other pieces of software that you take it to. Cool, okay, and what I'm also going to do is click on default shading and turn on my edged faces so that I can see all the polygons that are making up my model. So right now, I've just got way too many polygons here. I don't need all of these. If you've got lots of them as well, then you're going to want to turn these down. So I'm going to come over to my edit or modify tab over here, and then that's these segments here. I'm going to turn them all down to 1. Okay, so any extra geometry, any extra polygons that I need, I can just add them in manually with the connect tool, which we'll use in a bit. Cool, great. So I've got the kind of basic shape there. What I want to do is firstly create this section at the top, which kind of comes down. So what I'm going to do is now that I've got my shape, I need to right click and convert it to an editable poly. Brilliant. And then I can select the polygons, select this top one up here, and I'm going to use the inset tool. Okay, and you'll see what that does in a second. If I click inset, zoom in a bit, click and drag to get the thickness of that wall. It's quite chunky, maybe something like that. Okay. And again, if you don't know how to sort of maneuver around the models, zooming in and out and things like that, like I've been doing here, yes, step back and go to that previous video so that you can understand that before you start moving on to this. Anyway, so I've done my inset, that's about fine. What I want to do now is go to extrude and extrude that down. Something like that. Look at my reference image, goes down to about there. If you get it wrong the first time and then you click and drag again, bear in mind that's going to do another extrusion and it's going to leave this edge around here. So if I was to keep on doing that, you're going to get this going on, which you don't want. Control Z that. If you've done one extrusion and you actually want it to go down further, you don't have, again, you don't have to undo and then just keep trying. All you need to do is turn extrude off, and now all you need to do is just move this polygon up and down to the height that you want it to be. Okay, you don't need to keep extruding, you can just move this to the height that you want. Okay, and there we go. Something I said I like doing in the previous video, which I'll do again now, is I like to change this to the clay option, just because I like the contrast and I like working with this color. You don't have to do that. Right, so we now got this little like cutout piece here. Okay, so I'm thinking, how am I going to get that cutout? Well, I need some geometry going across here. Okay, and I need some lines going up there so that I can, so I've got a polygon essentially here where I want that gap to be. All right, so when you're doing modeling, it's all about getting the geometry in the right place so that you can make those edits. If you don't have the edges there, if you don't have the polygons there, you can't do it. You know, this is just one giant polygon. I can't do anything with that. So first of all, I'm going to go to edges and I'm going to select all of these 4 edges, holding control and selecting them all. And then I'm going to do my connect. Okay, so I've clicked connect, and what it's done is it's drawn that line through the middle of all of those selected edges to make a new edge. Brilliant. Now this is a bit low, it's not the height that I want it as, so no problem. I can just use my Z axis and the move tool to move that up. Now this is actually going to be, it's actually a bit higher, so if you went up that step you'd then drop down onto the roof. So I can now come to one of my side views, this one I do, the left view, and I can see where I went down to on that inside bit. So I can use this view now to move this up to something like there, so I can see that, you know, if this was a character in a game, they would come over here and jump down into there. Okay, so that height is about fine. So that's kind of a way that you can use these, you know, these other views when you're modeling. And then I'm going to come back to my perspective view and make it bigger again. I can deselect those now. So I've got that edge where I want it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to need an edge on the inside here as well. Okay, because at the moment I've only got it on the outside. So I'm going to repeat the process, but this time on the inside. Okay, going to do connect again. And now what I'm going to find is, obviously, I want that height of this one and this one to be exactly the same. I could move them up and down and just kind of eyeball it. So I could go to my side view and just line it up like that. And that, for this purpose, would be totally fine. For the naked eye, you're not going to notice like the point, you know, 0.00 something difference that might be between those. But if you really wanted them to be exact, what you can do is select one of the edges here, and I can see that in the Z axis, which is going up and down, that is the exact position of the height of that edge. So if I wanted all these inside edges to be exactly the same, I can just Control C and copy that value of that Z axis, select all of these guys, and then paste and enter that exact height value. So then I know for sure that the height of this guy and this guy are going to be exactly the same. okay? If you're one of those people that needs it to be spot on. Right, so we're getting there. Go to polygon now. I've got something here. Now I just need the vertical lines to create that little cutout in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go edge. I'm going to get those two edges there. Okay, and I'm going to get these two edges here. Okay, this time if I push to connect, the line's going to be right there in the middle. Okay, so obviously I don't need it in the middle, so what I can just do is in the y-axis this time, move that guy right down there to something like that. Okay, I just need to repeat that process again. So hold Control and select all of those edges. And hopefully you can see what the Connect tool is doing now. It's drawing this line in the middle of any of these other lines that I've got selected, like through the middle of any of them. So connect again. Now notice this time that there's a bit of an angle now on this edge, okay? Because one of the sides of those shapes was straight and one of them's at an angle. So it's created an angle there. Not an issue. I'm just going to go and move this over a bit for now. And I can use a technique, well, the technique that I just used previously for the heights, but this time I want it to be in this y-axis because it's going this way. So I want to line those up, right? Okay, but I want it to be exactly the same as this guy. So let's copy the y value and then paste it into this one. And there we go. Okay, I now have the polygons that I need in the right place for where that ladder is going to go. If you need to resize it, you could just select the edges and then move it around in the Y. Something like that. Great. So using just the Connect tool, essentially, we've added in all these edges and all this geometry in order to create these polygons here. Okay, which is the exact bit that I need to be taken out, essentially. Okay. So what I'm going to do is select them as I have done, and then push the delete key on the keyboard, not backspace, specifically the one that's got delete written on it. Delete it. Okay. So that's great, but it just causes this problem where I now have like an empty space here. So I need to fill these in. All right, so I'm going to go and select my edges. If I select those two edges there, okay, I need to create a polygon here, right, to sort of cap that off. What I can do is use a new tool that we haven't looked at yet, and it is called Bridge. All right, it's called Bridge because it's building a bridge, if you like, across the two edges that we've got selected. So when I click Bridge, see that? It's created a polygon across that space. Need to do the same here for that one. Bridge. And then the same here for this one. Bridge. Okay. So now I don't have an empty hole here. Okay. Brilliant. So if you were just customizing this, you could obviously just cut out any number of sections from this part if you wanted to. You could change the heights or whatever it is that you wanted to do to make yours different. I'm just following the reference image. Okay, so moving on to this section sort of here, if you like. Very kind of similar process, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it from a separate piece. I'm debating whether to build it from a separate. We'll build it from the same piece. Okay. So what I need is another edge going across here and an edge going down here. So you can imagine what I'm going to do is I need a polygon in that square so that I can extrude that outwards. So let's go ahead and select all of these edges here. Click Connect. Okay. And then I need to adjust this height here. So that's going to be something like that. I'm just eyeballing this. There's no measurements or dimensions. I'm just going for it. Great. So I've got the height. Now I need the vertical line going down there. So I only need it here, so I can just get those two edges there. Connect. And then, to be fair, that probably is about halfway. It's maybe leaning a bit more this way. There we go. Again, it's that process of drawing in those edges until you have a polygon the right size in the right place that you need to use your other tools to, to progress on. So this time now I need to go extrude, and I can extrude this out. Okay. Again, if you've gone too far or not far enough, don't start doing this until you've got far enough, because it adds all this extra lines and geometry that's just going to mess things up. Don't do that. And then especially don't try and go back in this way, because what's going to happen when you do that is this is going to go crazy. If you see that happening, it means that basically you've got multiple polygons on top of each other on exactly the same surface. So I went out and I've drawn a new polygon going back in, so there's now two on top of each other. That's why it's going crazy. So I'm going to undo that. So if you see that happening, undo, because it's not good. If you wanted to resize after you've extruded, same as the issue with the top there, I turn off my tools. I don't need any tools. I just need to select that polygon and I can just move it in and out to where it needs to go. Okay. So something like that's probably fine. Okay. Cool. So now I need an edge across there and across there so that I can extrude up. Okay. As you can see, extrude this section up here. So I'm going to start this way. Oops, sorry, get edges. That one and that one. Click connect. Move that line over to there, to the thickness of those walls. And then I need one going that way. So I'm going to get those two edges and then connect. And hopefully this process is really helping you understand how this connect tool works, because it's one of the most important tools. But it does sort of take a little bit of time to get your head around how it's working. Okay, and then extrude that up. Again, I feel like I've gone too far there, so all I'm going to do is hit W, which automatically turns off the extrude tool to my move, and I can just lower that down. Great. Okay, so the building's really starting to take shape here. And what have we used? We've used extrude, insert, bridge, and connect. Okay, 4 tools to create this. All these details, what I'll do is I'll do in a sort of like a part 2, if you like the windows, doors, ladder, these bits. But to finish this main part of the building off, we want to do this staircase. Okay, a few different ways we could do this staircase, but I mean, like what you could do, for example, is you could do lots of connect lines going across down there, and then one down there, and then just extrude at different lengths to create the steps. That would kind of be a bit awkward though. So what we'll do this time is I'm going to deselect my model. Just a note on deselecting. So if you're in one of these modes, like if you're in the polygon selection mode, or if you're in edge selection or something like that, and you want to deselect your model, or maybe you've got multiple models and you want to select another one, you can't. You're like locked into your model. Okay. To kind of be able to escape out of that, you need to go and click on Editable Poly at the top, and then you're able to sort of click away from it, select another model or do something else. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is come over to plus to create, and I'm going to look for, in this drop down here where it says standard primitives, I'm going to create something that isn't a standard primitive essentially. So it's going to be stairs. So 3ds Max is one of its main sort of best features, I suppose, or purposes, is for architectural visualization. So it's got a lot of tools for like windows and doors and staircases and things like that. So we can make use of those. So There's different types of staircases we can build. This one's probably going to be a straight staircase. Um, so what, if I can remember how this works, I think we need to draw a line. Yeah, so we draw a line like that, and then out like that, and then up like that. So it takes a few clicks. Okay, don't worry if it's not perfect the first time you make it. Mine obviously isn't. Its size is a bit wrong. It's going the wrong way. There's lots of issues there. Um, there's lots of settings that we can change here. So it might take you a few attempts to actually build that staircase right. It's a bit kind of awkward to draw them originally or initially. But once you've got something that's about right, we can start tweaking things here. So firstly, it's facing the wrong way, right? So I'm going to get my rotate tool and I'm going to turn on the angle snap toggle so that I can rotate that 180. There you go. And then move it over here. Go to modify. And then there's some parameters we can just change here. So I think we're going to want that closed. There we go. And we also want it box actually. So yeah, box is going to give us that effect that we've got there. Brilliant. So we don't need those stringers. We don't need a handrail. We don't need any of that stuff. Length, here we go. So now we can start tweaking the size of it. So if this is what I mean. You don't have to get it perfectly when you first create it. The width. So something like that maybe. One of those things that can take a lot of tweaking and time. A bit wider. That's inside of that actually, so the length needs to be a bit less. Even less. This stairs looking a bit steep. That's okay. I'm going to make that 60. Okay, just make sure your position is obviously right against the wall. If you're intersecting a bit into the wall, it doesn't matter. Absolutely no problem. It's probably better to be intersecting than be a bit further away. Okay, so next we've got rise. That's going to be a height. So sometimes you might need to really specify your numbers here. So something like that would probably be fine. Maybe I want to get that flush. I'm quite particular about these things. 69.9. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Riser hit. Okay, no, don't want to change that. Carriage. Obviously remembering what all of these things actually do. Don't need that. Railings we don't have. Stringers we don't have. Okay. Any issue with the stair one, which was something I was hoping to see, was the number of stairs. But I think that's about fine. I think the main issue I have here is that my staircase looks very steep. And if you look at this one, it doesn't seem so steep. I mean, it does look steep. I think what I can do is I can tweak my overall model because I need this to be a bit longer this way so I can fit, so my stairs don't have to be quite so steep. So what I can do, and you might have to do the same thing here so I can show you, is if I go to vertex this time, what I want to do is I want to select everything from this side so I can extend the size. So if I line up my view, or it might be easier to go to my front view, is select like a marquee select. So see that kind of ant trail marquee selection? I've selected all of the vertices on that side of the shape, which is actually the wrong side. So front isn't the side that I want. Let's go from the top view then, because I know it's those ones on that side. So everything on that side. So you can see that in my perspective view. And then make this bigger, and then I can pull this out, make that a bit larger. Okay, now I can come back to my staircase and continue to kind of modify that so that it's not so steep and weird looking. Okay, I think that works a bit better. Slightly off at the top there, but that's fine. Great. I think that's a bit better to my reference image now. Cool. Let's put on some high quality. A little bit of extra shadow. So great. So yeah, we've just used 4 different tools to create the main bulk of the building, and then we've learnt the stair. It's not really a tool, but the stair component, if you like, to create this staircase here. So we've got 2 different parts now. Just to wrap this up, we probably want this to just be one fixed item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my main object, which is this one, go into modifying it, and then you will see an option called attach. Okay, so if I turn that on, what I can then do is just click on any objects that I want to attach to this one. So if I click attach, you can see that has now become part of this one object. Turn attach off, and now this is one object which I can move around. Okay, so that's all for this part. We'll do a part 2 where we can create all of these little detailed sections which we can add on to what we have.